Hello. We are trying to answer the question about Christian education during 20th century. Uh, Based on historical samples, how is theology role different in each instance? And also connected is the question, how does theology play a part in forming modern Christian education? So, looking into the 20th century, it can be divided into two parts. The early part from 1900 to 1930 or 1950, and later part 1950 to 2000 and beyond. So, looking into 1930 and 50, when I say, I come from India, and anything that influences in the West, America, and for example, Europe, and it takes 10 to 20 years to reach India. But these days, because of internet and online connections, we are learning, or back in India, people are learning methods very soon. So during the early part, as I said, the first 3 or 4 decades, it was actually Christian education was deviating into liberal religious education. Um, Down through the history, even in the Bible, we would see, and in our own countries, we can see when there are a strict or pressure upon mankind, then they seek for solutions. So they turn to God. And when there is liberty or prosperity or affluence, then they tend to forget God. So I think because of the a lot of scientific inventions and based on the progress in technology and inventions made, this liberal religious education came in, and it was influenced by liberal theology and progressive education. When the man, even as Solomon has written, more the knowledge, then more you get deviated away from God. So when the term neo-orthodoxy is mentioned, it talks about how a new orthodoxy is something that is already fixed, and when you deviate from there and dilute the whole thing, it becomes a neo-orthodoxy. Karl Barth's emphasis on the Bible and Revelation helped move theology back into the center of the church, and ultimately influenced the role of theology in Christian education. So he was a good influencer in theology in Christian education. So that is how in late 1935-39, we see liberal religious education to a theological view of religious education happen. So Christian education became a sort of a label among all countries as something that has to be theology based. So influence of theology in Christian education was not just to teach theology, but to make theological truth relevant to bringing learners into a right relationship with God and mankind. So educational task of Christian education is to introduce a new generation of life and ministry, the church, combined. That's what we had seen in the early part of the 1900 to 1950. But then during that time, the Billy Graham is referred in our education book, and we see how evangelicalism came in. Our great evangelist came about, and then they were they brought the influence in Christian education. So, National Association of Evangelicals was established to maintain the doctrines of historic Protestantism. So, Frank Gabelin provided a theological foundation for evangelical Christian education that separated it from neo-orthodoxy influences. So that it's good that we see this up and down curves, or a subtle curve happening in Christian life and primarily even in the education we can see that. So conversion and Christian maturity are two primary purposes of evangelical Christian education. The Bible is the major source of content. Although historic educational context for evangelical Christian education was there, but the emphasis came that Christian education uh, to come into Sunday school, basically. So that is how I told you, even in a revolution took place in India by bringing Sunday class into the churches and then bringing Christian education. So liberation approaches to religious education desire to raise the learner's consciousness and social injustices to motivate the learner to participate in social transformation. This is another dangerous point. Every time when we talk about liberty or freedom, or then social transformation or community transformation, then there is a dilution of the focus of Bible and theology in Christian education.